Is it an airplane or an aeroplane?
How many aviation terms are inspired by the sea?
And why do all pilots have to speak English?
Fasten your affixes, stow your dictionaries. We are clear for takeoff on this high-flying episode of Words Unravelled.
Welcome to another Words Unravelled. I'm Rob Watts from the YouTube channel Rob Words.
And I'm Jess Zaferes, author of the upcoming etymology book, Useless Etymology. And now that we've reached our cruising altitude on today's flight, what term shall we start with?
Well, let's do what we so often do and begin with our theme, which is aviation.
Birdiness.
Birdiness. That is what the word means. Birdiness. Yeah.
Birdiness.
Avis, Latin for bird. There you go. Aviation.
It is a cool riff on the word navigation too, right? Which means oceaniness.
Yeah, so a lot of these words is something that's going to come up a lot. Is a lot of these words we take from French, and a lot of them we actually take from Jules Verne specifically. For example, the word aviator, that's a creation from Jules Verne. It's a translation from 1887 of Jules Verne's Clipper of the Clouds. Mr. Aviator, you who talk so much of the benefits of aviation, have you ever aviated? There he's coining at least two terms, aviating, which is not a word that we've taken on, but aviator, yeah, that's the first time we have it. And it comes from Jules Verne.
And aviation itself was coined after the notion of navigation by Guillaume Joseph Gabriel de la Landelle in 1863 in the book Aviation or Aerial Navigation.
Right, aerial navigation. So it's birdie navigation then.
Birdie navigation, birdie sailing.
We have a major transatlantic difference that we have to address up top here. And that is with the words airplane and aeroplane, because we don't call them airplanes in Britain at all.
You've kept that more etymologically accurate, I guess. I don't know, it depends on the time.
So airplane is a deliberate altering of the French word aéroplane or aéroplane, depends on how you want to pronounce it. But, you know, they kind of mean the same thing, so it doesn't really matter. And There was a lot of sense seen in calling it an airplane instead of an aeroplane. For example, during the First World War, the British RAF were encouraging their pilots to call them airplanes, not aeroplanes. And at one point, the BBC said, yeah, we should be calling them airplanes. But it never really caught on in Britain. We stuck with aeroplanes instead.
American English gets stressed out with that AE combo.
Well, it seems like early on people were having a lot of problems with it. There are a lot of quotes that describe people pronouncing it as aeroplane instead of aeroplane.
That's funny. Little metathesis there.
In the end, that meant that it was changed for across American publications, but in Britain, we were a little bit more stubborn and stuck with aeroplane.
But of course, we still use that aero in aeronautics and aerospace, and I guess the more scientific end of atmospheric and space travel.
In Britain, we have adopted the altered airport instead of aeroport, which it would be if we were again to just take the French word.
If I could fly a plane, I would do that. Maybe when I retire or whatever, I will get a pilot's license.
Yeah, my sister went up in one not that long ago because there's a little airfield near where I'm from in Derby, and she just zipped up, went around a bit with someone, came back down again. Looked like a lot of fun.
A lot of people have a favorite plane. Do you have a favorite plane?
I would really like to fly in an Airbus 380, which I've never done.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think it's a magnificent feat of engineering. It's a beauty. The way that it floats like a butterfly but looks like a whale. I think that is very, very sweet. What's your favorite aeroplane, Jess?
Probably the Sup with Pup, which is a British single-seater biplane, much smaller than yours. It's a cuter version, in my opinion, of the Sup with Camel, which is one of the better-known World War II fighter aircraft. And it's also the kind that Snoopy pretends his doghouse is when he's fighting the Red Baron.
I probably should have said the Spitfire, shouldn't I? Particularly because it carried Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, and Rolls-Royce is the big employer in my hometown. Rolls-Royce used to supply my school with stationery. We used to get little boxes of rulers and protractors and stuff. And they would have written on them, I remember this really, really distinctly, because I had a childish mind, because I was a child, so it's allowed. But they had printed on them the sort of unofficial slogan of the jet engine industry, which is a description of how a jet works. But they know it sounds a bit naughty. They like to repeat this mantra, which is suck, squeeze, bang, blow.
They're like, let's give this to kids.
It'll
go great.
They did give it to kids. We've got it on our desks. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. And that's it.
A little bit naughty. I feel like you undersold that one.
Do we mention the word jet? It's from the French jeter, which means to throw out. Because how does a jet work? Well, it works by throwing out either a liquid like a water in a jet ski, or a gas or air to create thrust, to push you along. It is throwing something out to make you go forward. So it's a jet.
And to your point, I mean, I don't know if this is why you were connecting these two things, but in the spirit of suck, bang, blow, etc.
Suck, squeeze, bang,
also...
blow, Jess. Don't forget the squeezing.
Okay, sorry.
You gotta squeeze.
Forget the squeezing.
You can't just go straight from suck to bang. Oh, I made myself blush.
I mean,
I've had like 25 years to prepare for this moment, and it still makes me blush.
Let me get this out, because it's not going to make it better. The word jet comes from the same root as the word ejaculate. So, similar spirit. I mean, basically, aviation is full of like lewd humor. We have talked about the term "scroot the pooch," which was an aviation slang term. The book "The Right Stuff" revealed all of like the machismo and dick swinging that came through with the early American aviation program and space program.
By the way, we haven't actually said what aeroplane means. Well, it's a reference to the shape of the surface that gives you the lift, really. Although actually the term was originally used to refer to an airship that, rather than the standard sort of round shape, had a flat surface instead. But aeroplane is the sort of flat surface that's not flat anymore. It's curved, because we've worked out that if you have a curve to the surface, it makes the airflow a different speed above and a different speed below, and that therefore gives you lift. But that's why an airplane is called what it is. Like, you can also have a hydroplane. These are, you don't have a hydroplane, but you can hydroplane, and these are references to shapes rather than the vehicle itself.
You do have a seaplane, though.
You do, yeah.
There are seaplanes like literally outside right now. I live next to two big lakes, and we have seaplanes fly over all the time.
Oh, that's exciting. I've never been on one of those.
I need to make friends with the seaplane people. Just like show up at their door. Hi. Do you like words?
Where I'm going next week, I'm going to go and stay in the south of France with my wife's family. And they have a lot of forest fires down there. But they also have a lot of big saltwater lakes, lagoons. They call them étangs, but those big saltwater lakes. And they put the fires out using the water from the lakes and the étangs. And they have these amazing planes that scoop the water. The artistry of these pilots as they get right down to, not just to the water's edge, to the surface of it, but dip enough into the water to scoop up a load, and then they shoot off again. They're beautiful, these yellow and red planes. When you see them training, it's a beautiful sight. When you see them actually in action, it's incredible, but it's also it means that something quite scary is going on, so it loses its luster. Not that etymologically interesting, though, I'm aware.
Well, I mean, this is connecting us neatly with a thing that we've been alluding to, which is that a lot of aviation terms are borrowed from water activity, like
right, very
nautical
true.
terms. We've got, like, we mentioned aeronautics and things like that, and in the same way that we have like cosmonaut and astronaut and aeronaut and whatnot. But also a lot of the parts of a plane are named after the parts of a ship, right? Like we've got aft and port and starboard and deck and rudder and bulkhead and such, right?
Yeah, but you also have all these extra ones that are a bit more specific to aviation, to aeroplanes, particularly to commercial aircraft as well.
Cockpit? I mean, that's not.
Oh no, well that is one
Mm-hmm.
from well, okay, so not originally from Maritime,
right?
History. Originally, a cockpit is where cocks
you put
fight.
cocks to fight.
Yeah, exactly. But what was a cockpit on a boat?
So in the 17th century, sailors were calling the area near the ship's stern the station of the coxswain, the cockpit, partially for its
Oh.
cramped, like chaotic nature. And then aviation inherited it in the early 20th century to describe the pilot's control area, especially in open cockpit biplanes that were like exposed and dangerous.
Right. So again, it's pretty much a First World War kind of term, isn't it? That they're using as they're flying the planes over the trenches, over to the
Mhm.
other side. They're calling the bit that they're sitting in the cockpit.
Hangar, I consider to be more affiliated with planes now, but it was originally a place where you would put your ships or other large equipment. It could be any kind of large equipment because it dates back to Middle French.
Right. I didn't know that.
It is composed of the same Germanic elements as and yard, like home yard. And then it went through Middle Dutch as like ham yard and then became hangar.
I did see a very dodgy etymology of this that I would say 95% sure is BS, which was that it comes from the French engare, which means to station something. But it does. I mean, it doesn't. So I mean, you just explain where it comes from.
Yeah,
It's not
it's
that.
older than that.
But
'Cause
you will see that said.
we have records of like the Middle French term hangar, or however you would say that in a Middle French pronunciation.
Hangar.
But it looks like hang heart with
Mhm.
heart being spelled like the deer,
Okay, there you go. Proof.
and it's
where
all
it was
muddled
needed.
with Dutch.
There are a lot of French words for parts of the plane. I mean, they've got pretty much a monopoly on it, more or less. But you know what the technical term is for the tail plane, which is the bit at the back that kind of looks like its own sort of plane. It's got a rudder and it's got the elevators. Those bit. There's a technical term for that bit of the plane. It's a French word. The word is empennage. It means the feathering because it's named after the end of an arrow. So the pen in empennage is the same word that gives us our word pen, the word pen being semantically identical to the word quill. It means feather first, and then it means a thing that you can write with. But here's a link I wasn't expecting to find. Penne pasta is so called because it is shaped like little quills. So therefore, the empennage is related to penne pasta. But that is not the only pasta that is lurking the fuselage, right? That's a French word that people know.
Like
That's like
fusilli. Oh, that's
yeah,
fun.
exactly,
Look at that.
exactly.
Because they're all spindle shaped.
Correct.
That's cool. That's
yeah,
cool.
so you've got at the back of the plane, you've got some penne and the main part of the. Now I want to make an aeroplane just out of pasta.
Go back to our elementary school craft activities.
Yeah, yeah. So fuselage means spindle. It does, and other spindle-shaped things have got related names, like the French for a rocket is a fusée, which just means a spindle. Really, because I have a fusil. Yeah, these all come from the same place. But we could also mention another French term, which is aileron. So you've got the wings. You also have, as you'll notice it before you take off, the wing changes shape, well, so that it can vary its surface area, so it can vary the amount of lift that it has. And the things that make that happen, they're called the flaps. And then you've got aileron, which are usually sort of at the end on a commercial aircraft, and they're making the plane do that. But I pronounce it in a slightly French way because it is a French word, and it literally just means little wings.
That's adorable. I'm a huge fan of this.
See, there's a lot of cute words that have come directly from aviation rather from the sea as well. But I'm going to do one more. Did you know?
Okay.
Did you know that the wings and the ailerons are not the only wings on a plane? Just say no, you didn't know. So
no,
I
don't. I know this is going to be a dumb joke, though. So
no, it's not a dumb joke. It's not a dumb joke.
Right,
it's just a bit convoluted. That's
no,
all.
I didn't. Okay, tell me.
The other wing on a plane is the aisle. The aisle running down the middle of the plane.
That's cool.
Yeah. So the word aisle comes from the Latin for a wing.
Mm-hmm.
The spelling of it is an absolute travesty. Obviously, we spell it AISLE. It comes from a Latin ala. There's no S supposed to be in there. it ends up being spelled isle in English, ISLE, the same as an island, isle. Eventually, to differentiate it, we stick an A in front of it, which just makes it more of a mess because that makes it look a bit more like the French word for a wing, which is aile, AILE. Anyway, that's why isle on a plane is spelt in this terrible, terrible way. But the original aisles were not on planes. They were the wings of churches.
Right, but the aisle separated the like nave with a row of pillars.
Correct. It's the sides of a church.
A ship also had an aisle, which was like the side too, right?
Ah, no, I didn't know that.
And then armies also had aisles, which were like wings. But this is like old French stuff.
My point about planes having an extra wing on the inside, that still stands.
I mean, if you count the cockpit, then there's a couple more too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, actually there's got to be at least 4 in there because you can't have a cockpit with only 1 cock in it.
Right.
You need a pair of cocks. Why am I blushing?
I've got another one that might make you blush.
Oh, I don't really want it, Jess. Go on.
Well, this one's fun though. The notion of being pooped out and being tired. In aviation, you would say that an engine pooped out. The idea is it died mid-flight, but it's also a maritime word too. So the poop on a ship is the deck formed from the roof of the cabin built on the stern or the rear, right? Usually the highest deck. And a ship was said to have pooped when crashed by a wave from behind. To say you are pooped out is to be like an overwhelmed ship or a plane that's not working.
That's great. I mean, I never would have guessed that. So if I say, I'm pooped, that's what I'm evoking.
Yeah, you're referring to your poop deck or the engine of your flight having died.
This seems like a rich vein that we should be able to go down. Some more idioms from aviation that might surprise us, because you've talked about balls to the wall before, which I really enjoyed as an explanation.
It is originally an aviation term. Starting around World War II, military planes were designed with ball-shaped grips on engine controls, particularly the throttle. To get maximum power, you would push it all the way forward toward the front of the cockpit. And then to go into a dive, you would push the joystick all the way forward to the firewall, the fire-resistant bulkhead that separates the engine compartment from you. So that you don't go up in flames. Every time I say that, someone's like, well, I'm going to nitpick this slightly. So like, please do, because again, I only know so much about planes.
Another one that comes from the cockpit is flying by the seat of your pants, which I know it sounds obvious because it's got the word flying in it, but it does indeed come from the idea of flying. It's flying without instruments, basically. It's flying on feel and instinct alone, because maybe your instruments have failed or whatever. You're literally flying based upon the vibrations from the aeroplane itself that you're feeling through the seat of your pants. It's actually a very vivid image.
In World War I dogfights, which had like an 11-day pilots in World War I only survived like an average of 11 days. You kind of had to, like, your instruments were definitely not, I mean, state of the art for the time, but not by today's standards. So you kind of had to do a lot of stuff on feel. I mentioned dogfights. It's kind of the same idea as the cockpit. It's an intense, tangled, ferocious, close quarters fight in the air.
Gotcha.
A couple other terms first used in aviation. None of this, I don't think, will surprise anyone, but Roger that. I think that has extended past aviation, but it's saying you've confirmed receipt of a message, and it's from the phonetic alphabet, which we'll get into in a little bit, where R was rendered Roger to signify received. Now the phonetic alphabet uses Romeo.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to us getting into phonetic alphabets. I went down a rabbit hole on this one. Let's tick off some more aviation terms, and then we'll get stuck into that a little bit later on.
Have we talked about Mayday before?
We haven't talked about it. Let's talk about it now.
It's the French for mid, like, help me. Mayday.
Mayday. Yeah, I mean, it's deliberately chosen because it means something to English speakers and to French speakers. I mean, I don't know, to English speakers, what does it mean? It's like a bank holiday in May, but yeah, to French people, it means help me. But both can get their lips around it, and it sounds kind of the same in either language.
It was coined as a distress call in the early 1920s by Frederick Stanley Mockford, who was the officer in charge of radio at Croydon. And he was asked to think of a word that would indicate distress and could be understood by everyone. And much of the air traffic at the time was between Croydon and Le Bourget Airport in Paris.
Yeah, it's often forgotten that Croydon was like the big early airport, because it's kind of a nondescript part of the southeast of England now. Yeah, people don't get too excited about Croydon because it's not. I suppose it's not that far from Heathrow, really. But yeah, Croydon Airport was the big deal. Have you ever wondered why it's called taxiing on the runway?
It's because you're like cruising around looking for fares, right? Like that's the idea.
No.
No.
Well, I mean, ultimately, no, it's not that. It's not
Okay,
that.
tell me.
I did look into this one. It's originally comes from a training aircraft, right, that was used in the sort of 1910s thereabouts. I think the earliest reference to it that I could find was actually 1909, but it would have been used in the 1910s. And it was a little aircraft that they used to call the taxi, and it was
cool.
an aircraft that you would train on the ground with. And the reason it was called the taxi was because this sort of just hopping in it, going around on the ground and then hopping out again, was thought of as being a bit like taking a taxi ride rather than soliciting fares, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's not quite what I meant, but yeah, absolutely.
Go on, what did you mean?
I didn't mean necessarily that you like the plane was looking for fares, just the notion of it moving around like a taxi is the idea.
Right. Oh yeah, well, I mean, that is what, it does come from that, but it doesn't come from the plane that we're talking about, taxiing, moving around like a taxi. It comes from a plane that they used to call the taxi, that was moving around like a taxi.
Called a taxi.
Yeah, exactly. But that sold something for me, because I'd wondered that for a long time, but never quite got to the bottom of it. But I did a bit of reading about that today and got there.
I read that the term rat race was first used in aviation around the 1930s through the spectacle of aviation training. Like trainee pilots were made to follow their leaders through loops and rolls and turns, each tighter than the last. And by the late 1930s, the term had wriggled down to describe this like grinding competitive churn of any other kind of daily life. It is also originally just racing rats. Like we've also got records from that.
What's with all of these nasty animal sports?
Animal sports I'm glad we don't do that as much, aside from
racing rats fighting dogs and cocks. What are we like?
No fun.
Can we briefly touch on some other aircraft? We did give a helicopter a mention before, which you actually turned me on to the sort of bizarre way in which we nowadays interpret helicopter.
It's the best example of rebracketing in a surprising way, I think, because it is easy to take the second part of the word helicopter and tack it on to something else, make a gyrocopter or whatever else, which happens. But that's a mistaken rebracketing, because the elements we're working with from Greek are helico, spiral, and or wing. So it's related to words like pterodactyl, which means finger wing, and things like that. So I think it's just an excellent example. You mentioned the clipper of the clouds earlier, and we have an interesting connection here too. I mentioned that helicopter means spiral wing. That doesn't make as much sense now because helicopters do not have spiral wings, but they used to. And some of the earlier prototypes had more spiraliferous wings, and one of them happened to be one that was designed by Gustave Dependant d'Amicourt. He was an expert in coins.
Okay.
He also coined the word helicopter, basically. He dabbled as an inventor with his friend Gabriel de la Landelle, and they invented mini helicopters called spiralifers due to their spiraliferous air propellers. And so you can see how now they're like more obviously designed to achieve lift through like spiral motion than today's helicopters. But Jules Verne was a big fan of these guys, and he helped popularize the word helicopter after learning about Gustave's inventions, and they inspired him to write the novel The Clipper of the Clouds.
Someone once asked me, so should the word helicopter be pronounced helicopter? Because we've got that "ter" that we also have at the start of pterodactyl, but we just pronounce it "ter." And the answer is, what would your answer be? My answer would be, well, no, it should be pterodactyl, not. It's the pterodactyl that we need to pronounce differently, not helicopter. We're talking about phonotactics here, so we don't start words with "ter" in English. That's why we say pterodactyl. That's the only reason we say pterodactyl. That P is not intrinsically silent. It's just, in English, we don't pronounce them when we see them like that.
Right. When we have a word that begins with PT like that, we just don't pronounce it because the rules of English phonotactics make we feel weird to say pt
Yeah, yeah. We can't
unless
make
it's
one
in.
syllable out of that terror with a per at the start of it. We would have to go pterodactyl.
Mhm. But in the middle of the word, we absolutely can. So helicopter makes perfect sense.
So it doesn't need to be. We don't need to be calling it a helicopter. It's okay.
Do you know the name of the I mentioned Clipper of the Clouds, but the Clipper of the Clouds is not a helicopter. It is a multi-rotor gyrodyne, or a compound helicopter, and it's called the Albatross.
Oh,
And it achieves lift using vertical air screws.
okay.
Did you know that the Confederacy also had a helicopter with spiral wings?
What do you mean?
There was a helicopter invented in 1863 that was intended to bomb the Union's blockading fleet at Mobile, Alabama. Intended to, but fortunately, like the Confederacy in general, it didn't really take off.
Wait. We should talk about Zeppelins.
Yeah,
right? Because I'm thinking about the Hindenburg disaster, right? Which is obviously is
That's very sad.
Yeah, very sad, and part of American history as well as German history. The Zeppelin is named after Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin, who supposedly perfected it. Although if you do watch the footage of the Hindenburg, you're going to see something that's less than perfect. Oh, the humanity! But the like umbrella term for what we also call airships in English, because Zeppelin is obviously just a German word. It's a Zeppelin-Schiff, was what it was originally called. But they are also called dirigibles, which is a really satisfying word. That comes from the French word for to direct. So it's dirigeable in French, means to direct, and is directly related to the word direct as well. So a dirigible is a directable airship. It's a Montgolfier. We should say where that is. It's named after the Montgolfier brothers who invented the thing, because you can direct it, because it's got a rudder on the back, and you can, rather than you get in a hot air balloon, you just hope it takes you somewhere that isn't going to kill you when you land. whereas dirigibles, you can actually direct them.
A couple things here. One, I think it's no secret that I worked in B2B media for quite some time. So I wrote about advertising and whatnot. And most of the people that I interacted with in that space did not care that much about etymology, despite my persistent desire to make them aware of facts in that vein. So I would occasionally
everyone into etymology.
You would think, but apparently the CMO of Pepsi did not think so. Anyway, I did make a joke one time. I was a director at one of the organizations, at several of the organizations I worked at. I referred to a project one time as dirigible, and no one thought that was funny.
Oh, that's such a shame, because the word does have currency, or has had currency in English, in the way that you've just used it, right? Something that is it doesn't have to be an airship. Dirigible, something that's directable. It's something that we can steer. Let's try to make that more frequent, that usage of it, because I like it.
One of the reasons I made that joke initially is because we were talking about blimps as an advertising function. And again, nobody thought it was funny.
No, I mean, that is funny, Jess. That's funny. Don't let anyone tell you that's not funny. That's funny.
But do you know why blimps are called blimps? Because this is cool too.
I haven't got a clue.
This is a theory. I hope it's true. But it's that the prototype's nickname was the Type B limp, in the sense of a thing without an internal framework, as opposed to the Type A rigid.
Oh.
I see why that one may be suspect, because I don't know that I would call it limp as opposed to any other name for unstructured,
Good point. Yeah. So we raise an eyebrow, but I do like the explanation.
I would like that to be true. I hope it is true. But I also can't find any, I can't find a prototype that says B limp on it. So
yeah, if someone sent you that explanation on Blue Sky or X or something,
right, I'd be like,
I'm not so sure about that one.
That was a what we call a turbulent word origin journey.
Turbulence. Yeah. Also got an interesting etymology.
Means like a crowd or confusion. Like violent disturbances in the air.
It's actually very hard to describe what turbulence means without using a derivative of the word turbulence. because we say disturb, which comes from the same Latin root as turbulence. We say perturb, and they all come from this same idea of a disturbance. But then there's also this sort of rotational quality to to the Latin word as well, which is why we have turbo and turbine as well, which do come from the same place but mean something slightly different. But it's not really that big of a stretch, is it, to go from the idea of disturbing something to also the idea of kind of stirring it up.
Can we talk about body parts found on planes?
I beg your pardon?
So which part of the body is a pilot related to?
They're related to it. So am I looking for a common etymology between the word pilot
and a body part?
Skin, hair, like peel, like
feet. It's feet.
Oh.
It's feet. It's from the same root as all the words for peds and peds and whatnot. So
okay.
The word pilot is also, I mean, we've talked about our nautical terms, but it is also originally a nautical term. It is from a medieval Greek term, pedotes, ultimately. It's gone through Italian and French and a number of other things in order to get to today's spelling. But it was a word for a rudder or a helmsman, particularly a steering oar. And it was perhaps said to be like the foot of the ship, which is kind of interesting. I don't fully understand the logic here, and I bet somebody knows too, because it had to have pertained to either the comparison to the rudder or the person using it. Another body part would be the throttle, which we've talked about, I think, briefly before, which would be the throat. Any kind of throttling is like a narrowing of a passage, which also suggests throttling a person's throat. Right? And it's related to the word throat. And then one other one, a more modern term. Do you know what a deadhead is in aviation?
No, I don't.
It is a crew member riding as a passenger, reporting to where they're next needed, but not working on that flight. And it is also originally from the theater, not from ships as much. A deadhead was someone given free admission, like a seat that generated no revenue, but filled out the crowd. That's all I have on that.
I like that though. The pilot linked to the feet. So that means, usually on a commercial aeroplane, you've got a pair of feet at the front as well, don't you? Because you've got two pilots. Can I talk briefly about what language they're most likely to be speaking?
Oh yeah,
when they
let's do
encounter
that.
air traffic control. So the official language of international aviation is English. It just is, right? It's the language that the International Civil Aviation Organization has decided that everyone should be using. And if you want to be a pilot or air traffic controller anywhere in the world, you have to have proven your proficiency in English to ICAO's. So ICAO is how you pronounce the ICAO initialism. So it becomes an acronym, I guess.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. It's really annoying that it's a 4-letter thing, ICAO, but they've pronounced it ICAO, which just sounds like 3 other letters, which seems kind of
right. I've heard the term before, and I have seen it written, and those dots didn't connect until way too late.
Well, anyway, they've decided you've got to have level 4 English. This is a level that they have set. There's I don't know what levels 1 and 2 are, but level 3 is you're not good enough to do it. Level 4 is you're just good enough to do it. Level 5 is your English is pretty good, and level 6 is your English is really, really good. They call it expert. But I was reading a bit about why they decided that everyone needed to be able to speak English, because basically the rule is that you communicate in English between pilots and air traffic controllers unless they have a language in common, in which case they can communicate in that language if they choose to. There's this myth that I must admit I believed, but I have now been disabused of, that French air traffic controllers are the only air traffic controllers in the world that don't speak English. This is not true, but it does seem like they don't like it. So what it is if you go to the busiest airport in Europe, Charles de Gaulle in Paris, if you fly in there and you're a pilot and you don't speak any French, you can get a little bit confused because there is a lot of French flying over the radio waves because they're speaking to other French air traffic controllers speaking to French pilots in French. And that doesn't happen everywhere. For example, in Japan, it doesn't matter if air traffic control and the pilot are Japanese, they'll speak to each other in English, which is kind of amazing, really. But in the year 2000, Air France tried to make air traffic control and pilots at Charles de Gaulle Airport speak English to one another. The policy lasted 15 days when the unions for both the pilots and the air traffic controllers. And if you ever try to fly over or into France, you'll know that the air traffic control unions have an awful lot of power there because they're permanently on strike. They said, nah. And so anyway, from that, we get this idea that, French air traffic control don't speak English, but they do. Their proficiency maybe isn't as high as it is in other countries. I think that's a fair criticism. That was one of the reasons they said that it didn't work at Charles de Gaulle.
But anyway, proficiency.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I mean, they did cite, like, we're very proud of our language. Yeah, but we also don't want planes falling out of the sky. And this is what ICAO says. When they put forward this policy, it's directly related, they say, to a terrible, terrible crash above New Delhi, actually, in 1996. The worst civil aviation disaster in history, in terms of just, only planes being involved. You obviously got things like 9/11, where obviously many more lives were lost. But, 349 people were killed when a Saudi aircraft that was taking off, it was a 747, it was a jumbo jet, crashed into a Kazakh plane, a much smaller one, that was descending, and it had descended further than it was supposed to have done as per the instructions of air traffic control. And one of the reasons that was given why that might have happened was that they did not understand the English of the Indian air traffic controllers, the Kazakh pilots. Now, the Kazakh authorities say, well, actually, we're not sure about that because this pilot was teaching other Kazakh pilots how to speak English, which is either a good defense or really, really worrying. They cite that as the reason why it was necessary to have a single language for air traffic control all around the world, and for pilots to all be using English, or if they share a language, and have it marked on, by the way, it has to be marked on your little card, your certificate, that you have the language standard to receive and receive control, or to give it in that language. I just went off on a bit of a rant there, I realized.
Well, no, I'm glad you did, though, because this relates to kind of one of the solutions to this problem, which is the ICAO or NATO phonetic alphabet.
This is the Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf. I won't do the whole thing.
Which has been like a work in progress for the past century, right?
I don't think it's changed much since 1956. Has it?
Right. We've got different waves. So the first ones were place names: Argentina, Brussels, Damascus, Oslo.
Really?
And then there was a shift to personal names like Baker and Charlie. A lot of this, influenced by American and Angloization. But then the test case for these is like whether it's easy to pronounce across multiple languages. And there's also a focus on the vowels. Like the vowels can't be too different. I mean, of course, there are exceptions like Delta, but like Alpha, and I want to say Romeo was chosen over some of the predecessors because the vowels were a little too different.
Yeah, one of them was Robert, one of the predecessors to Romeo, which is my name. Yeah. And William was also in Robert and William. Sorry, William's my middle name, but they were both in the World War I Royal Air Force. Their little version of the phonetic alphabet. It was a lot of. Actually, it's really quaint. Can I just mention a couple of others that were in there? Because it started with apples butter, which I think is adorable. But also in there, you've got pudding, you've got Queenie, which I think is very cute. And you've got monkey and nuts for M and N, which I like. And Y was Yorker, which is a cricket reference. How about that? I bet they were all playing cricket before they were going out in their planes. And Z was zebra, but of course now it is Zulu, and Yorker is Yankee.
That's one of the ones that was changed because of the vowels and because zebra versus zebra is pronounced differently. And then Juliet has two T's because French speakers would not pronounce the T unless there were two.
Yeah, and alpha is spelt with an F in the NATO alphabet rather than a PH because, well, it's obviously a bit complicated to spell it with a PH, but they were particularly worried that Spanish people would pronounce it alpa, which, I don't know, for some reason that is really bad. By the way, I mentioned the World War I one for the British. There's a really nice one for the Americans that they were using in the Second World War that's actually much better known. It was known as the Abel Baker alphabet. I don't know if you've heard of this, but obviously it starts with Abel Baker. It's Abel Baker, Charlie Dog, Easy Fox, George, How, Item, Jig, King, Love, Mike, Nan, Oboe for O, which is a spelling pronunciation nightmare. Peter, Queen, Roger, Sugar. I don't know why they go for a sh for sugar,
Yeah,
but it was the same in that. It was the same in that British one as well. Tear, Uncle, Victor, William, X-ray, Yoke, and Zebra.
I feel like that would make for a very fun party.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, just a list of, a shopping list or a rider. I want an able baker, some Charlie, a dog, and an easy fox.
Another variation of this was proposed by the ICAO South American Regional Office, and it has words like coca, Elsa, fiesta, gato, hombre, and maestro, and things like that, which maestro also shows up in a couple variations on the alphabet too, but it also has like Peru and Rosa and Santa.
Yeah, they've quite deliberately chosen some words that do exist in English but are foreign. Words like Sierra and Tango and Alpha, etc. I was looking at some of the old NATO communiques on this, actually some declassified NATO documents. I went really deep into this rabbit hole I was telling you. And I saw one that was the last changes that were made to the NATO alphabet before it was said, right, everyone start using this thing now. Well, the very, very last one that was changed was the word for N, which now is November.
Yes, there we go.
There we go. But before it was nectar. Which is interesting. But there was an understandable worry that it would be confused with words like vector and sector. So and also it's a little bit difficult for foreign speakers. But you also mentioned one which was changed very late in the day, which was coca was changed to Charlie. Extra was changed to X-ray. So the word for X didn't originally begin with an X. But and what else are you going to put?
We had to wait for the technology to catch up with that one.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Then you had Metro that ended up being changed to Mike, and uniform was previously Union.
The first X in the alphabet, when it was location based, it was Xanthippe.
Was it?
Socrates' wife, which I guess that's not location based. Is that also a place?
It's not very helpful though, is it? If
right,
it doesn't have the sound of the letter.
Right, it doesn't
that too. Yeah. I mean, it's hard enough, right? You've got to come up with a Greek pronunciation for a start.
I would love the average. I don't know. This is the stereotype that comes with the book, The Right Stuff. But like the meathead pilot pronouncing and spelling Xanthippe might have been a.
Can we just
a challenge?
Get in a different plane. We should take a different flight.
Since you mentioned there are different levels of proficiency in English, it's like what level is your average English speaker at? What level is your super proficient speaker at? Are we on like multi-dimensional English level since we're getting all meta with it?
Yeah, maybe. Are we finally at level 7?
We're level pi.
At Atlanta International Airport, they developed their own sort of carve out for the NATO alphabet. They had a problem with the letter D there. So their runway D was known as runway Dixie. We can talk about why it was changed, which is a pretty recent change. But could you guess why they didn't call it runway Delta?
The presence of the Delta nearby? I'm not.
That is
no, you're going to surprise
actually,
me here.
I did read one thing that says they don't use Delta. They say Dixie around the Nile Delta to avoid confusion. I don't know if that was,
the Delta airline, perhaps. I don't know.
There you go. That's what it is.
Oh, okay, there it is.
Atlanta International Airport is the hub for Delta Airline. So they called it runway Dixie. They now call it runway D. Actually, it's taxiway. Sorry, taxiway Dixie, not runway Dixie. But okay, just imagine I'd said all the way through taxiway instead of runway. But I mean, why did they change it from Dixie?
Its affiliation with our nation state that didn't take off.
Yeah, exactly. So Confederacy rears its head again. I won't apply any adjectives to there. Yeah, so they just called it taxiway D, but that's what taxiway D is called at every other airport, so it's not such a big deal. Can I just quickly touch on the numbers from aviation as well?
Sure.
They're a little bit different. So obviously everything, the point is you're supposed to be able to understand what someone is saying over a dodgy radio connection, where it's all a bit sort of fuzzy sounding, and things that sound similar is just not helpful, but also sort of slightly awkward English sounds aren't very helpful. So, for example, in aviation, you won't necessarily say 3, you'll say tree instead. 4 becomes fower, as in to rhyme
Ooh.
with lower. You spell it out Fower, though you
Yeah,
wouldn't
because
generally
these charts
spell
all
it
have
out.
like the very clear pronunciation guides, right?
Here's an understandable one. 5 is not pronounced 5, it's pronounced fife. And that is for the same reason as you skip the number 5 when you're doing a countdown in a lot of circumstances. It's because it sounds too much like fire. And there's a danger of someone shooting someone, I think, rather than the danger of people thinking there is a fire. But nevertheless. And the other one that's different is 9, which sounds an awful lot like the German for no. I read somewhere that was the reason that it's been changed. I'm not totally sure about that one.
I have a theory on that actually. When I
Okay.
like my phone number ends with the number 9, and when I read it out over the phone, people can't hear it sometimes. They're like 8.
They
Maybe
confuse
it's
it with
just my own
8.
or any other number.
Well, I thought it sounds like 5, doesn't it? It's got the same vowel sound as 5, so maybe it's that. But anyway, you're supposed to say niner if you want to say it
Niner.
over the airwaves. There's some even madder ways of doing the numbers, though, that have been tried out. This is one that's used by International Telecommunication Union. It's basically only used in sort of some maritime circles. But instead of saying 0, you say nada 0. Instead of saying 1, you say una 1. 2 becomes bisso 2. 3 becomes terra 3. They basically have these ways of saying the numbers where you incorporate 2 ways of saying the number into a single word. But it means that obviously it takes twice as long. The best one is 6, though, which is Soxy 6.
Amazing.
Said with a shimmy. And with that, I think it's time we make our final approach towards the end of the podcast.
So let's bring it in for a landing, though we've really enjoyed you joining us on this flight today. If you'd like to join our frequent flyer program, if you've enjoyed this ride on Etymology Air, we recommend that you join our membership program on our YouTube channel.
There's a button that says join underneath the video you are watching right now, or if you're not watching the video and you're listening to the podcast, if you go to the description, you'll see a link to the video. If you click on that, you'll see the join button there. Or if you go to youtube.com/@Words Unravelled, you can also find it there. Click the join button and you'll see the varying degrees to which you can sign up to join our crew, as Jess put it. We'd love to have you on board. Till next time, though, take care.
See you then.